Popeyes is in the headlines and not for the reason you think.
Not for the reasons you think.
First of all,
Okay.
shout out to the New York Times digital chief for coming up with a headline that included Popeyes for this story, because that's like brilliant stuff.
Yeah,
You've
you
heard
noted that.
you've heard about Popeye Gate, right?
I heard about Popeye Gate and I am floored. Very few things are just such that I'm just like I have a visceral like visual reaction, like pop eyes like pop out.
Yeah,
But that was one where I was just like, what is going on here? This is wild.
So I don't know the names, but I know the situation well
Yeah.
because it's been now sort of like tread through the news
Yeah.
cycle and social
Names
media
aren't
cycle.
important. Yeah.
So I'm gonna sort out the details as I can, which is that a 34-year-old Black woman and a 44-year-old Black man got married. So this article is a wedding announcement. New York Times does wedding announcements. It's basically like an article that explains how the couple met and what led them on their path to marriage and matrimony, whatever.
Okay.
So this particular couple, the man and woman met on Hinge. So they connected on a dating app where you have to connect with both people in order to speak.
So I'm not familiar with Hinge.
Okay.
And I don't know what you know about it. Okay, because
I can tell you. I can tell you.
I was just gonna. I just want to know because I know that there are some dating apps that are like completely like associated with just hooking up. Then there are some dating apps where the people just genuinely want to find a love connection. So where does Hinge?
And Hinge is on that side where they want to find a love connection. Like it's more, and you specify that, right? So Tinder's more the hookup app, you know, or like your Black people meet, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Those are hookup apps, right? Like that's like sliding in the DMs.
I know somebody that met their white wife on Black People Meet, and they're happy.
Is that right? Oh, is that a pioneer? So on Hinge, it is definitely designed for you to make strong connections. They have features like being able to record a voice note. They have like different kinds of like leading questions about your lifestyle, or like I can't it's a deal breaker for me if you blank, and then you like fill out. So there are some real great qualifiers for connection, and in this case, the woman and man connected on Hinge, which is the only way you can start talking. And apparently he canceled on her twice after they had started speaking. So there was some level of connection, but for some reason, before the first date happened, he canceled twice, that's actually probably the biggest part of the story, the biggest detail. Right. Because a third time they arranged to meet, and before they arranged to meet, she said to him just straight up, like, hey, if you're going to cancel on me again, just like delete my number. Like I'm blocking you. Like, this is not worth it to me. It's not worth my sort of trouble.
That's fair.
Which is super fair. Right. But they decided, and this was pre second wave pandemic. So it was like things were just opening up in first wave of pandemic.
Okay.
And they decided to meet in a Popeyes parking lot. Right. Because that was like the place that they could meet. So they were outside. They were literally outside.
They were literally out.
Right. And then he showed up with a KFC, like a meal, like a 2-piece
for himself.
Right? Well, he showed up with it for her to share. So he had a prepared meal. You know what I'm saying? And she was pleased. They talked. They connected. They talked on the phone. So it was a great connection, basically. Like they shared a first kiss, etc.
In that parking lot.
So I think it was in the parking lot, and then maybe other things happened that weren't in the matrimony story,
right? With KFC breath.
With KFC grease on the lips. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I don't know. I have not explored those those waters. So I don't know.
I know, but I think it's a really Black thing to have chicken grease on your lips for your first kiss. I feel like that's like a sign that things are going to go well.
I keep chicken grease. I need some chicken grease right now.
Keep a tub of chicken grease.
I keep it, you know.
So with the chicken grease on deck, they have this great conversation. They connect, basically, right? Like that, the false starts end up not mattering because they align on certain values. He wants to be a homeowner and believes in generational wealth. She wants to be a homeowner and believes in generational wealth. She is a VP at like a financial
I think this was
company.
also very important to the
Yes,
story.
so
Yes.
she's a VP. She's president of her MBA association, and I think her sororities alumni association. So she's a well-to-do Black woman who earns a lot. And I believe he was like information systems, like an IT person. He was an IT person, so
IT
steady
person
career.
is vague.
Right, steady career though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
but also coming off of a divorce. He had been married in 2011 for 6 years. He got divorced in 2017, apparently. So it's like, he wasn't the freshest pick, right? He could be considered damaged goods. Like if it were the other way,
right.
And she was coming off of a divorce, right? And 44, things would be said about her. So he wasn't necessarily the freshest pick.
I think the other thing that was noted was that he was also open about he was juggling and dating multiple women at the same time.
Yes,
right?
He was also dating 6 women, right? So he was dating 6 women, and he said they quickly became obsolete, right? And look, as a person who's been there, right?
It can
sometimes
happen,
sometimes, and here's the other thing about this story, and we'll get into this the gender wars of it all, but I think that like women do that all the time, right? Like have a few on decky, like have a few on the roster, a few on the bench, a few waiting to get into the rotation and tryouts. Yeah. He had something like that going on when they met. They were single. They were on a dating app. Right.
Right. I mean, I guess there's you're absolutely correct. I do believe everybody has somewhat of a roster, even if there's a 6-man out there. Like you said, some people just waiting to get called up, somebody get, on injured, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So 10-day contracts, you never know.
You never know. Like, you're exactly.
Who's going to crack the rotation? Somebody goes out with an injury.
You come out, get that 10-day contract, you fumble, like you ruin your stats. It's crazy. You got O's across the board. I don't want to name no names, but it's a couple of names I can name. But, you just don't do the work. So, you know what I'm saying? You just have to go. And then, you got to pick up and just, keep looking for new prospects. But for certainly, I think that when we talk about dating, dating is not something where you owe people exclusivity. And dating doesn't necessarily even mean intimacy. It just means you are just trying to figure out.
Getting to know.
You're just getting to know. Exactly. So there's just various levels of dating. Some people do date and there's intimacy involved. And they might be having intimacy with multiple people. I'm not here to judge. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way with this. Some people are dating. They're just literally just kind of just trying to figure out like, where do we connect on an intellectual level? It just all, it all.
I'm glad you're not here to judge.
Yeah.
The way this story turns out, it's like, wow, I didn't think there would be so many judges. There's a Supreme Court of judges.
No, so I have my thoughts on what I would do versus, what the outcome is for sure. Certainly. But yeah, so I'm not that part of him having the 6 rotation roster. That was not the part that was alarming to me.
Okay.
But continue.
So the next phase of their dating is after 6 months, he moves in with her, right?
He moves into her home.
He moves into her home.
Father divorcee.
Yeah, father divorcee. And
do we know if these children are of that marriage, or were those children prior to the marriage? Do we know that? Detail?
I feel like now we're getting into the
okay.
That's granular. That's granular, right? Like, but even okay. So he's got he's got a past. He's got a rap sheet a little bit in the dating scene, and it's not pretty. He eventually goes to one of his homies, like an ace of his, and I guess that homie buys the engagement ring. This is after the woman has said on one of their dates, we're gonna get married. Like I can tell we're gonna get married. Like they're in. They already know they're in love. Like obviously she has him moving in, right? So we're gonna get married. He's like, all right, I'm gonna take the initiative. I'm gonna ask my homie, because of whatever his financial dealings are, I'm gonna ask my homie to like, all right, go front me this engagement ring.
I think they said that it wasn't a homie, it was a coworker.
It was a coworker. Okay. Okay. Well, it has to be someone friendly, right? Like to be able to say, all right, buy this engagement ring for me. Like, I'm gonna get you on the next check.
I've had a coworker like borrow $20, but
I know, like I forgot my card going to
or
lunch.
Like, can you spot me for lunch? And then maybe tomorrow I'll get you, like, real light stuff like that, where it's like they don't really owe you anything. It's kind of, back and forth stuff.
Well, the one thing about it being a coworker is that that person will get paid. Right, like you understand,
when they get paid.
If he's at the office, you are gonna get your money on payday. So coworker fronts him the money, eventually gets paid back for the engagement ring.
Oh, good.
They get married, and you know, then they do this whole sort of like wedding announcement. It's in the New York Times, and that's where things go off the rails, I feel.
Yeah, it just went so many different places. Some people work in complete support, like, hey, they like it, I love
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm a real they like it, I love it person. So I
Yeah,
will say
yeah,
that. As far
yeah.
as what I would do, it would, I mean, the first cancellation is already like, if I guess if they had a connection, like the first cancellation is already like, that's unfortunate, things happen.
Yeah.
Second cancellation is like, that's really, like that's unfortunate. Again, great connection. We were talking,
Yeah, yeah.
but because of that second cancellation, there would have been no third for me. So I would not be
Right, right.
married. I would
Right,
not be
right.
married. Like there's nothing to discuss. Beyond that, I'm not meeting anybody in a Popeyes parking lot. I don't even care if it's like, you owe me money and you
Not
handing me
even
like,
the penny, not even in the first penny. Like
I don't care about, no, not in the, no, we're not meeting no Popeyes parking lot. Like
no,
let's, no,
no outside date. Not even
no.
take a walk date.
I mean, there are parks, right? Isn't that what people do?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
go
but
to
I
like
don't know.
Central Park and stuff like that.
I want to believe I want to
Prospect
believe
Park.
that she was pleased with how things turned out because she retold this story to like a national news outlet. So I'm like, she had to be somewhat like, oh, that's cute. Like, was there something in the banter that would have made Popeyes the place for them? You know what I mean?
I just, man, I feel like he's a smooth talker.
Listen, he's doing more than
Some
talking.
people can just, some
He's
people,
doing more than
and
talking with
that's
them
probably it
kids.
too. Because I, I don't know what that man got on people where he was just got freshly out of a divorce. Well, not fresh. I don't want to be unfair, but
Yeah.
it's pretty recently. Jumps right back into another marriage. He's had kids. We don't know if that's from another woman or the current woman. Six
Right.
women was talking to him at the same time. I believe this man probably, he's got away with words and other things.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lid for every pot, though. I'm
Mm-hmm.
squarely in the lid for every pot camp, like I told you. And I think because it seems like the story was told from her point of view to a reporter,
Yes.
she must be happy, right? Like
Yes.
to your point of they like it, I love it. And so the thing that kind of rankled me or like unsettled me about the
Uh-huh.
conversation about it is it seemed like specifically a lot of black women were like, couldn't be me.
Right.
And I'm just not sure how well that holds up in actual relationship dealings. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, although that's central, but it's
Right.
like if in your relationships you don't have the space for people to make any like deviation from what you envision or expect, like
Right. Exactly.
what kind of relationships are you going to end up having?
No, that's a great point because you got people that kind of like they have their idea of who you are and who you are
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be for them. That's a controlling nature though. That's
Right.
kind of that's something in a personality that a lot of times does not work for people. If you seek your own independence, I don't seek friends that are just like me, or I don't look at you and say you have to be this kind of way. I'm not that kind of person.
Right.
There are people that structure their relationships in that way though. So yes,
Right.
that's kind of the couldn't be me of it all. When I said it couldn't be me, it's just I'm a pretty reliable person. So there
Yeah.
are just certain things that like that wouldn't make sense in terms of the long term. Like, is this person flaky? So flaky in a
Right. Right.
partner
Right.
is not something like that couldn't be me. And that to me was
Right.
just the initial red flag. Where I had a problem with where the relationship went, because I feel like the couldn't be me wasn't necessarily about the parking lot. A lot of people were talking around it and not trying to be real loud about it, but they felt because she was more senior in her development and her career
Mm.
trajectory that couldn't
Mm.
be me was more so like it was unequally yoked and she shouldn't be dating that
Sure.
man
Sure.
because,
Sure.
and it seems to me that, and that this is where again I said, hey, they like it, I love it. She seemed more settled and more balanced and had more like going on like in terms of financially. So I
Right.
don't want people that feel like they've got it all together to feel shamed if they can
Right.
be
Right.
the supporting party. Like she had a house already, it seems, right? Like
Right.
when he moved
Right.
in, she already had her house, she already had everything financially in order. He was able to move in and it wasn't taking anything away from her. So it's like, at what point are you just like counting people out just because they don't have what you
Right.
have? Like, is that enough
Right.
if somebody makes you happy? Like, I mean, like it's like saying, like, let's just say like the position that she had, right? And
Mm.
she met somebody and like they just maybe she was just randomly at a happy hour and she finds out that the guy is an assistant manager at Foot Locker, but they had a great connection. Does that mean that she can't date him? Like, what if he's happy with that job?
Right. And beyond just the job point, because that's actually a really good point, which is to say not everyone's going to be at the phase in their career that you are, but if you are occupying a role within that relationship that's agreed upon, then you're good, right? Like, and I say this from experience. I've been in a relationship where someone has earned more than I have. I've been in a relationship where someone has earned less than I have, and that wasn't the sticking point in those relationships. It was like, if we agreed to a certain role with our earnings, right? So it's like, if I'm the person who's saying, I'll be home and I'll be domestic and I'm going to make up for whatever it is that needs to be made up for in order for you to keep earning and for me to be on my career track. I think that's really the conversation that needs to be had, rather than this sort of like superficial markers of what you think you should have in the world. Because that's when I think people's relationships become about the external world instead of like what works for them.
And it's also because people are seeing what we talk about this all the time, but like what people what they show on social media, and so much of it is just not real. Even what they say, you know, and people just, it's like you're trying to hold yourself to a standard that doesn't even exist. Like if you really were to unpack what's really happening in those relationships that you, I guess, idolize or you want to live up to, it's nothing like what you're actually seeing. And I just want people to realize that, like, you know, nobody's perfect, you know, and there's no perfect relationship. Do what makes you happy.
Absolutely. I mean, it brings to mind like Megan Good. There are a lot of relationships that were supposed to be these picture perfect, equally yoked, like you said, grounded in Christianity and like patriarchy and all those fun things that we say that we don't want to be a part of until it's on the table, and then we want to be a part of it. And I think that's been the surprising part, to hear the outcry from Black women, because it's like, so you don't want someone to be happy with the choices that she made.
I think sometimes people just aren't happy seeing people happy.
Like
it's kind of like, you know, they say misery loves company. And a lot of times you'll see, even if you're like friends with somebody and, you know, you suddenly get into a relationship and you're just super duper happy and like, you know, you have like butterflies and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You might have a friend that just sort of feels like someone's snatching that friend away from you, and they may do things to probably sabotage that connection and just remind you that, you know, or find ways that you shouldn't be dating so and so. I've seen that hundreds of times.
Listen, the headlines for this video are going to say, Koku thinks Black women jealous, bitter. Like, social media influencer Koku calls out Black women.
I ain't got no problem with that. Okay, I'll call out anybody. Okay, stop hating on your friend.
And here's my admission about the fuckboy of it all in this guy's situation, because there's definitely some fuckboy markers that I'm quite familiar with that are going on here, which is like okay, you're moving in with her. Okay, y'all agree to that. How sustainable is that, right? Okay, you're a divorcee, 10 years older, not quite where she is in her career. How sustainable is that over time, right? And so there is a valid place that critique comes from. But I think the thing that makes me say key for every lock, lid for every pot, is that they seem to be so much aligned on values. Like, they kept talking about through the article, like, we have the same values. We had a similar background. We have the same values. And if that is the case, right, and if they're doubling down on that, and that's not just, you know, for social media, for the article, that is actually the main thing you need to keep your relationship together. He's like, you need some kind of alignment on values. I don't care what relationship it is, right? Like, we talked about
whether that's like
an entertainment relationship that broke up, like friendship, whatever relationship it is, you have to agree on the values that you're going to share to go forward in that relationship.
I think it would be really hard if you know, there's one person is religious, if you don't share political values, moralistic values, things of that nature. Does she want kids? You know, does she not want kids? Like, all those things. So there's so many things that, you know, you don't necessarily need to take away your own sort of so-called deal breakers. But if they're completely aligned, like you said, then, I mean, who are we to judge it? You know,
apparently we're all here to judge.
We're all here to judge.